Hey, Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Not too bad at all. So I brought you a video this time around.
You did. It looks like Sarah Paine is with Matt Kavecki on This Is the World, Polish
Yeah, she's definitely one of
journalist.
my favorite people to listen to on YouTube every now and again. Great, very, very great professor. Really balanced lady.
Right. Yale professor. She's amazing. She works for the U.S. Navy College, independent researcher. She's super smart, and she doesn't hold any punches. And like she'll say,
either side of it, which I do like about her, she casts a critical eye across both sides of the aisle, as they would say.
She doesn't punch down. She punches everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
Like if you're failing and it's going to affect the world stage and there's a military component, she probably has a pretty good handle on it. So
yeah,
they kind of let her run wild. So we're gonna run through this. So there's a lot to talk about here. This is going to be pretty chunky. So we'll if we have to do a follow up on this one, we will. But we're going to try and get through a good chunk of this.
Yes.
So let's fire it up. Let her cook.
If you spit in other people's faces, which Americans are currently doing, what do you expect other people to do? Why would you blow your alliance system? That's beyond stupid. Trump can destroy the United States part in NATO. I assure you that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin do not spend their days golfing. With all this happening, we're going to have nuclear proliferation all over the place.
Those three concepts are super heavy right off the bat.
Yes.
Right? So but one, go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead.
She does go in later into this episode about those points. And she does bring up NATO will survive if the United States pulls out. There'll be under no illusion there. The alliance and the infrastructure and everything that's being built will still survive without the United States. They'll just bring on other partners, which they're in the middle of doing at the moment.
Right. So the UK is part of NATO, but not part of the EU right now. So they're still part of that pact, right? But they're looking pretty bad because they have more admirals than boats. Like that's not great.
No. But you have to remember now with the likes of other countries deciding to join NATO, it's going to be very interesting to see with this new alliance. It looks like it's going to be most of the European Union and the rest of NATO. And you have to remember, as she was saying, the institutions that are built will not be destroyed. They'll just evolve without the United States, is what the point I'm trying to make.
Right. Plus the perceived disrespect and like, it's not looking great. But let's see what else she has to say. And it's 18 seconds before they get to the interview stuff. But Kavecki here is just laying out a lot of the things that she's going to be hitting on. It's a pretty good opener.
If the United States plan is to forcibly take Panama, Greenland, and Canada, it is imperialist.
Should the Europeans stop supporting Netflix, YouTube?
I'm not going to say should, that Europeans will. It's the B word, which Washington hasn't figured out.
Ooh.
Will Russia attack Europe in the coming 2 years?
Okay, no one knows. So there are events. I'm going to give you as many frameworks as I possibly can because I find them very useful. So I've given you the tactical, operational, and strategic. I think it's really useful for breaking down decision making and see that if you've got a bunch of operationally minded leaders, you can wind up in strategic mayhem, right? So
operationally minded means those who will take action proactively to do a thing. And as we can see, the United States right now is proactively and has proactively done some things, right? So once you have that jumping off point, then other countries who are forward thinking or operationally thinking might also forward action. So
yes, but what it's come across now is, say we're going to use the Iran war that's in the headlines at the moment, is the US have found themselves in a unique position where their former allies, including the UK and other NATO members, are just saying, we're just not going to help you. We're not getting involved. You started, you finish it.
Right. And then, so the United States has expeditionary forces that can handle one theater. I don't know that we can handle a second theater. So if we go in theater in Iran, we're going to have a real hard time if something jumps off in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's why it's so important in the modern world to have allies. As
Right.
powerful as the United States is, it can only be in one place for a prolonged period of time. It can't
Correct.
be everywhere.
Right, because all the resources
And-
have to logistically go to that side. Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure. All right.
That's what they've learned that lesson over many years. Like, look at the Afghanistan and Iraq. They had to have allies come in and help them. They had no choice with logistics and so on. And unfortunately, the way the Iran war is going to play out, it looks like it's going to be America's baby all the way. With Israel, obviously. Israel helping out as best they can.
Well, but so Dwight D. Eisenhower said something interesting. He said, if you make war profitable, there will always be war. And when you mix dinosaur juice into it, it just gets worse. It just gets worse.
Yeah, now it looks like the Saudis, it looks like other Middle Eastern countries are getting a bit upset over the whole scenario.
Right. But one of the Gulf countries actually attempted to, at the UN, sanction Iran. And that's not good. But those Gulf countries don't want to get shot at with missiles by Iran, even if it's at military bases that are United States or NATO bases in those territories. Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE.
UAE and all the rest of those countries are not just blaming Iran. They're also blaming the United States and Israel.
Yes, they are. War. They are. But the sanctions, the ones that they wanted to levy, were against Iran. So, but yes, we can get into that later if we do.
Yeah. Whatever happens at the end of this war, I presume this war is going to last quite a while. It's going to be put America in a very, very difficult position, as you were saying.
Precarious at best,
They can only operate in one theater at a time.
Effectively.
They cannot be everywhere.
Right. Well, and our recruitment numbers are down from what they were. They're up from the last president, from the last So from
but they're saying overall, because I remember I think it was you sent me a video or somebody else about U.S. military recruitment numbers, and they're up and down in the last 20 years. They dip, go up every 3 to 4 years. No matter who, by the way, who's president, it just goes up and down like a ticking clock.
Well, that has to do with restrictions on joining, right? If they need more people, then they'll lower the bar. So.
Yeah, but it seems to be every 3 or 4. There's a 3-year high, and then there's a 3-year low, 3-year high, 3-year low. It's just a constant tick up since the 1970s, up and down.
Right.
Well, it doesn't care who's the president, by the way. It's just one of those unique things.
If somebody wants that graph, we can put it in the show notes. But we can show the recruitment numbers and see exactly where they are, just to make sure we're telling you the best thing we can tell you. So, all right.
Yeah, I'll hunt down that video. Actually, they put it down to is it social events or something like that. He has a great way of putting it. This young man, anyway, he did a lot of research around it.
All right, here we go.
This one is about high probability, low probability events versus high consequence, low consequence events. So World War, or what is it? A war that spreads deeper into Europe, that is a really high consequence event, right? None of us knows what the probabilities are, but I think all of us knows that probability has gone way up. So if it's a teeny tiny number, we're still in a small number, right?
Right, a place that feels as if there is a safety in the world, a kind of safety, at least in the Western countries, right? So it's a safety issue. How safe do we feel as Western nations of this of X event occurring, right?
Yes, but there's the biggest thing us Europeans have to remember. There's been a talks recently between Germany and France of the French sharing their nuclear technology with the Germans, nuclear weapon technology with the Germans, and so on. And that is a big escalation, and that's a big step up in military force across Europe.
Right,
nuclear weapons suddenly being deployed outside of France and England.
That could be a problem.
Remember, that is a big step up. I think that is Europe's answer to any Russian invasion. That's being honest.
But hand the baton off to Germany and have them do the work?
No, just more European countries having nuclear options.
Right. And then making them and possibly Israel part of the treaty, right?
Not Israel.
Oh, okay.
A lot of most European countries are putting together this defense pact among themselves.
Huh?
It's That's what I'm saying. It's the institution that NATO built. That institution is still there. It'll just be in a different form now.
Right. That makes sense. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
But it is it's an incredibly high consequence event. So guess what? You have to prepare for it. And then let's not play half-court tennis of just looking at us, and then we don't care about everybody else, which is Americans. This is classic Americans. Americans are going to just do whatever, and this decides the fate of the world.
Right. That's not really how it works, right? Because there's logistics, there's trading, there's things that are going around the world back and forth, be it information or goods or services or commodities, whatever it might be. Right?
Yeah.
We can't just put blinders on here and just disregard the rest of the world.
The problem is, because we do a lot of videos with this show, is I've seen more and more said, like of Fox News, CNN, and so on, American press, for the last couple of months, even the last 12 months, I would say, feeding the American people, this line of the world needs us more than the world. The world really needs us. The world won't survive without us. Or the whole world will collapse into anarchy if we're not there to enforce peace. But the European armed forces combined are 1.5 times the size of the United States. There's over 500 million Europeans. I think the sad thing is they're being fed this line, as she said there, that America can run around the world and do whatever they want. There'll be no consequences. The consequence now that is coming in the next year or 2 or 3 years is the common European Defence Pact, where all the European armies work as one.
Right.
And that's the institution that NATO built, that she will be on about later on.
Right. Well, the recruitment numbers in the UK are way off. The recruitment numbers in Ireland are way off and down. But places like Poland, it's up.
But you have to
France
remember,
is down.
By the way, the European Union is not on its own. We're talking about the likes of Norway, Sweden, Finland.
Right.
They have massive navies.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of those are petrol supported
when we're talking
too.
about recruitment numbers, the extra spending now is actually being a great incentive in Germany recruitment. The recruitment's up across France, Spain. Other countries are recruiting more. We're spending more in Ireland ourselves on recruiting soldiers.
Well, I hope they can get enough to get their stuff together and defend their land. Yeah.
Yes, but you have to remember, combined, all of us together are bigger than the United States.
Population-wise, for sure. Yeah. Right.
Yes, but also military-wise now going forward, by the way they're spending money. When we all start working together on common defense.
Right, but that military infrastructure needs to be built up. It's not quite there yet.
Yes, but it's getting there. That's the warning she's trying to give here.
Right. All right. All right. Here we go.
Dream on. There are many. It's called hubris. It's a mistake. The Greeks identified it 2,000 years ago. What happens if there's some kind of combination with Putin and Xi about who's going to get what and who's going to do what? And then you could be in a world of hurt, right?
Right. If they come to some kind of concord where they're going to split things up, like we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and they actually work together to achieve some goals, that could be very interesting. But the dragon and the bear don't normally get along like that.
They normally
have their own schism.
They normally don't have a long ancient history.
Well, right, but they can be driven into each other's arms. Very, very well, not easily, but they could be driven into each other's arms on that.
And at the moment, there's been a lot of talk back and forth for the last few months between China and Russia. That's been, by the way, not even held in secret. You can see it. It's on Euronews all the time. That's a comment of.
Right, but that's not something that filters into our news because we're controlled top down, functioning like a propaganda machine out here.
Yeah.
It's not great.
But she's right. They are having meetings. They are coming together. And what does the United States do then?
Well, I think we get stuck in our algorithms. In fact, you were talking about earlier because we were going through a series of videos and you're like, your algorithm's way off. I have to go to another tool to pull up anything that's even center, right, or left, because the things we research, we try and do left, right. But once an algorithm figures you're this kind of thing, then it filters everything that you get. So I can't get news from the other side. So I get ground news, Epic Times, stuff like that, to find the balance, to find the article. Like I have to go looking for the articles, as opposed to getting a fair and even spread of articles that are left, right, center, whatever. Like I don't get that. I just get one kind of thing, and it's super annoying. It takes even more time to research things, right? Yeah. It's super annoying. But
That's why I remember I was showing you one time. We were looking up news articles. Even though we went onto the same website, I'm based in Europe and you're based in the US, we're getting completely different search results from the same news page because of your algorithm and so on. It's just I would say for the most part, a lot of European news is pretty balanced, centered. It's usually centered for the most part.
Right. Well, in the United States, it's either left or it's right. It's a two-party system. It's an effect of that, and it's an echo chamber. Once the algorithm figures you for a thing, then it's going to want to feed you the thing that's going to keep you on and keep you clicking the things they want you to click. Right. It's just going to drive the wedge between the people. So anyway,
as I said, I remember we were looking at one news story. I think I won't say the YouTuber's name, but he was reporting on my country in Ireland about an incident that happened. And I was going, okay. So I remember we clicked on the video and I was going, wait a minute, I know that incident. And he was saying, oh, immigrants are one right. It wasn't an immigrant for this, on this one occasion, it wasn't. But it's such massive propaganda over there that even she's pointing out that you're being fed that you can go around the world and do whatever you want with zero consequences.
Oh, no, the consequences are very real, for sure.
Yeah, now they're happening and in a really extreme way.
Yes, for sure. And a lot of that has to do with operational type governments or proactive governments that try and stop a thing before they think it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, but she made a good point there at the start where she said both leaders of China and Russia don't run around all day playing golf. They're actively running their countries.
Right. Well, I don't know that playing golf is going to keep you from running a country. But I think it's a visual image of why are you not...
Visual image.
It's a visual, it's a perception thing at that point. And then the perception becomes the reality.
It's even when they're both being interviewed. Say, when the Chinese ambassador was over in Ireland, he was being interviewed. He was well spoken. He was, he had a lot more knowledge of our country than say even our politicians. That kind of respect to other countries.
Right. No flair, just knowledge, just cognitive drive.
Just knowledge and common respect.
Right. All right, here we go.
Putin offers Xi Jinping the kind of resource security the guy needs, right? With it would take you 10 years, right, at least to develop what kind of Siberian energy reserves that would then go to China. That kind of scenario would be disastrous, and you don't want it to happen. So you better be prepared and better be strong in case it does.
If you don't want to miss our upcoming interviews with Sarah Paine, subscribe to our channel.
What can we do more?
You need to continue. The United States is opting out of NATO, apparently.
Right, a lot of their actions are indicating that big time, especially with Italy and Spain and some other countries in the EU are like, we're not going to play whatever your game is right now. Like, we don't respect it.
Yeah, everyone around Europe, nearly every European leader, bar one or two, but for the most part, the EU in general is just saying, we're not getting involved in this. It's not our monkey, not our circus.
Yep.
Even the rest of NATO, even the NATO members are saying, we're a defense organization, we're not getting involved.
Right. That makes sense.
But that doesn't mean the rest of NATO goes away. So you've already got an architecture, and then you can create the parallel one where the United States is not at the table. But you need to develop the military capabilities, right? And I suspect with all this happening, we're going to have nuclear proliferation all over the place.
Makes sense, because people are going to want to shore up their defenses, and the best way to shore up the defense right now is to make sure that you have a nuclear program that's effective as a standoff to anybody wanting to come into your space, right?
Exactly. That's going to happen all across Europe. Everyone's is going to grab on. Well, Germany probably be the first, by the looks of it.
But they're dealing with France.
Norway and Sweden are debating it at the moment. I doubt they'll go forward with it, maybe, but they're debating it.
Right.
Poland is hesitant about nuclear weapons. Well, the option will always be on the table for them. But that's what is eventually going to happen. Everyone's going to start grabbing a nuke.
Right. Proliferation for sure. All right, here we go.
And that will diminish the influence of the current nuclear powers. Why? because there'll be other seats at a much bigger table, so that it's not just negotiating with a handful of people, it'll be trying to deal with a lot of people. And you can see this, and it's going to be very expensive. I can see this happening to multiple European countries.
Right. When there's more opinions that are put in, negotiating between 3 people is way easier than negotiating between 8, 10, or 12, for sure.
Now, like at the moment, there is a pretty big table of nuclear powers. Well, not big in terms of how many countries are in the world, but there's a lot of people at the table. And now, as she's saying there, that table could double, if not triple in size in years to come.
And that makes it almost, it's almost untenable now. So,
yeah, what happens if Japan suddenly says, do you know what, we're going to develop nuclear weapons?
ooh,
How's China going to react to that?
ooh, that would be a problem for China. They would really, tomato.
What happens if South Korea, or even other countries around the Asian Pacific, to suddenly decide to develop nuclear weapons?
Wow.
They already have India with nuclear weapons. They already have Pakistan. Now, if other countries start joining that club, how's China going to react to that? Or Russia, for example.
Right. Well, it's not going to be a very exclusive club, and people might countries might have a huge issue with that. So
at the moment, everyone roughly knows how each nuclear power is going to react. Like, India is obviously never going to use their nuclear weapons unless they're attacked. Same with Pakistan. Same for China and Russia, for the most part, in the United States. Same with most nuclear powers, will only ever use it in defense.
Right, not proactively, yeah.
But what happens if other countries outside that defense pact start getting nuclear weapons? How are they going to react? No one knows.
A lot more factors involved, and then it becomes real messy.
You think about it. How close did the US come to a nuclear exchange when there was nuclear weapons threatened to be put on Cuba off the US coast? Then they went to nuclear war. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. What happens if Japan gets his hand and starts developing nuclear weapons? That could start a very interesting debate or a war.
Well, then would China become operational against Japan? Right. That's
the big
question.
This is the world that's in front of us right now. This is the world on the table at the moment.
Right.
Because the world, the natural, as she said, the natural order of things since the Cold War has been completely upended.
Right. For sure. All right, here we go.
I can see Japan getting nuclear weapons, right? Wouldn't you? After watching all of this and this relentless threats that are coming from China and Russia's made it clear these things happen.
Sweden's newspaper called for nuclear weapons.
Yeah, you're all going to be calling for them if the United States has decided that nuclear shield is not what it's playing. Europe will have to develop its own. That will not make Russia safer. Having a bunch of nuclear weapons in Europe, that will truly not make Russia safer. And then if you're going to have nuclear weapons in Japan, and then Taiwan certainly has the intellectual expertise to do this. We're into a whole new world.
Right. China having it is bad from China's perspective, but Taiwan having it is absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. That would motivate them to become operational at almost 100% likelihood. Right.
Like no one knows what the Chinese military is like at its current state operationally. We can roughly guess. They've robbed enough technology from everyone around the world.
And they have some serious naval capacity that they've just recently revealed as well, which is a little scary.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. No one knows how they will operate, but they have enough people to operate really well.
They have the capacity,
that way. Right. Yes.
Here we go.
But nuclear weapons would be very, very dangerous.
State be sovereign without them, without nukes?
All right, I think in things that I've written and the discussion of continental and maritime, there's some things that need to be clarified. One is a maritime versus a continental power, and the other is a maritime versus a continental security framework. So a maritime power. I mean, hardly any countries are islands, right? So for the handful of countries that are islands, if you have a dominant navy, at least locally, nobody can invade you, right?
So Britain, Ireland, and some other countries fall into that small
A
band.
lot of countries fall into that. But
Right.
you have to remember, in Ireland, we rely on our defence treaties with the European Union.
Right.
So we're okay there. The UK relies on us and the European Union as well for the most part. So we all kind of work together in that sphere of influence.
Right.
When it comes to our naval security, as the Russians have found out when they've started taking some of their ghost ships off the table. But we all rely on each other. I know we've had our troubles in the past. And I think the problem with a lot of Americans is because we had a conflict 40 years ago, we're going to have a conflict forever. That's not the way the world works. We discovered through conflict that we're better at peace with each other than with conflict.
Right.
We've learned that lesson in the European Union over many years.
Takes time.
That's why we work. That's why it works well. That's why, for the most part, we have squabbles in the European Union all the time. What if we're threatened, as we've seen with Ukraine? We don't pull any punches there. We just put on our boots and get going and fix the problem.
It's the admirable way to do that. All right, let's get back to Ms. Paine.
So, and then you can practice trade and other things you can focus on. Whereas if you've got land borders with someone hostile, then you have to have a big army, and it requires that. But let's just go a step forward. After the Industrial Revolution, it introduces compounded economic growth, and that turns out changes the currency of international power from land, which it used to be. Land used to be where you get the commodities you can grow. This is where you get the peasant conscripts to fill your mass armies.
Then you go to a trade type deal from there. That's the growth pattern.
Yes.
Well, once you get the Industrial Revolution and compounded growth, it's industry, commerce, and trade. That's where and then from that you can fund your army and do other things. Then you add in the post-World War II institutional framework that allows everyone to coordinate. Now let's look at Europe. It's a big peninsula, or two peninsulas, right? You got the Nordic Peninsula and you got the rest of the peninsula. And that allows you to exercise a maritime security paradigm, because Europe can always get its goods out because the peninsula ends on the high seas. Whereas a country like Russia or China, not so. They're surrounded by narrow seas.
Well, and there's the deep water ports that allow the movement of those vessels and things.
Yes.
So that's advantageous for sure to get products and goods and services and all those things out to where you need to get them. So there is advantage in that.
In wartime, their narrow seas will shut down to merchant traffic. You just can't get it through. Ask Germany about the world wars, how much merchant traffic it got out. Zip.
Yeah.
French have nukes.
They do.
But the French also said in 1939, we don't want to die for Gdańsk. We don't want to die for Poland. I can't quite believe in European nuclear sharing.
You can't believe. Well, wouldn't that be kind of a problem? Because I would suspect that Germany will get nuclear weapons because it's going to look at it and go, we have to. And I wouldn't be surprised if Poland gets nuclear weapons. Boy, as Poles, you've had quite an experience with Russians. Goes back a long time.
Germans too.
You would be under zero illusions. And so if the French aren't going to be reliable, that was why the miracle of the United States, of this wonderful World War I generation conscripts, and then at your age, they're surviving the Great Depression, and then they're the strategic leaders who understand that you're much better having many friends and delegating.
Right. Allies. Gotta have them.
Yes.
Gotta have them.
You have to have allies and friends in any conflict.
Right. If you create too much of a schism between yourself and your allies, you can be out of allies, and that can be a problem.
And that's what America is kind of learning that with the United States learning that lesson at the moment with this war. They have no allies to rely on.
Doesn't look good on that front. All right, here we go.
No.
Whose responsibilities are what, and the United States was going to provide the nuclear shield. But we don't have wise people like that anymore. They're dead. And we got, what, a failed real estate mogul? A reality TV host as president? I assure you that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin do not spend their days golfing.
Let's talk about US-Russia dynamics. What's the American play here?
Play for what?
Are the United States really attempting a reverse Nixon or Russia?
Nixon believed that ganging up with China in order to defeat the Soviet Union was a good strategy. It was. Right? And Henry Kissinger had a comment about foreign policy that every problem you solve just results in a more complicated problem. So overextending Russia militarily because it had to militarize its entire frontier with China, very long one with nuclear armed mechanized forces, while it's doing that all of Eastern Europe plus garrisoning the place, bankrupted the joint, right? They're just spending all their money on that. And so Nixon saw that, he played the card very well. But now we got another problem. So Russia has been debilitated, but now we're dealing with China. So we're in another period now. So you need to do other things.
Right. China got built up to weaken Russia. Russia got so weak that long around Gorbachev's time, the wall fell. It just went into disarray.
You're right. Just bankrupted the place.
Right. But
she's right.
But now in this era, China is way more powerful. Right. You just bought another problem.
Yeah. At the moment, well, Nixon played the card of hands, the hand of cards he was dealt at the time. And it made sense, as she's right. It made sense. And it worked. It bankrupted the USSR. It brought that down to its knees. Eastern Europe was freed and so on. We all know the history. But at this particular time, do we have a strategic leader in the White House that's capable of doing what Nixon and others before have done? I don't think so. She's right. I don't think he's capable of it. Of just sitting down at a big map and figuring this out.
Well, if he has good advisors, you better start leaning on him.
Oh, well, we've seen the caliber of his advisors so far. You know, it's when Trump first got elected, I thought, here we go. Finally, he'll start, making the world a better and stronger place. But he hasn't done that. This is a president who promised peace, and he hasn't done that. I think she's right.
Right.
He's not strategic enough to deal with any of these countries.
Well, it is appearing that is the case at this point. So we will see where this thing goes.
But I don't see U.S. leaders currently thinking strategically. They're thinking operationally. It's how I personally stay in power, whether it's in the House of Representatives, the Senate, or the presidency.
How do you understand that it's not strategical
Because
thinking?
why would you blow your alliance system? That's beyond stupid. Why would you try to blow up your scientific expertise? That's beyond stupid. Think about how the United States did well in the Cold War. It was by being way ahead of the Soviets technologically and then denying them the technology. Shutting down research programs is not going to get you there. And certainly not shutting them down suddenly so you have people in labs having to turn off refrigerators that kill years of data. Who does that? That's incompetent. This is not thinking strategically.
Right. That's a big miss. Big miss.
Yep. Do you know what she's talking about there was when the Department of Health was taken over by the guy, the Kennedys. He had this great idea that he was going to shut down all vaccine research. Shut it all down. And he brought in his own bunch of, how can I describe them?
People.
Sycophants.
Sycophants, people,
yeah. Just call them sycophants. That's what they were. And he fired a bunch of people, a bunch of scientists, a bunch of researchers, because, he didn't agree with what they were saying. Shut it all down. As she said, years of research gone down the drain, and that's it. Gone. Now, the same thing happened with US ID. Okay, fair enough. There was a lot of fraud there. But what it was also funding was an awful lot of worldwide research, technology, so on. All that was shut down. It's gone. As she said, labs are closed. People have moved on, got jobs somewhere else. Years and years of research gone.
Well, development and personnel development and all those things that go into making a good research program. Yeah.
Gone. Any advantage the US is going to have in the next 5 to 10 years, technology wise, suddenly got all flushed down the toilet and it's gone.
Not great. Not great.
No.
All right.
It is called a series of own goals. And then this big distraction is all this ICE and stuff going on, which is terrible for the people who are on the receiving end of it. And meanwhile, we're not fixing our tax system. We're not fixing our burgeoning budget deficit.
Right. The tax system is horrible. It's just getting worse. Yeah. And they're introducing more taxes and more fees and more things. At this point, most Americans are paying over 50% of their income into some kind of tax, right? Or something that they are taking our resources. The Fifth Amendment has a takings clause, and we're so in violation of that so many ways.
And what are they spending your resources on?
Well, things the American people didn't vote for or want.
Resource on. They're spending what? So far, the bill, they're what? 200 billion has been allocated again towards this war over in Iran.
Right.
For what? That it looks like this war is going to cost roughly about $1 trillion before it's ended, if not more, if it keeps going the way it's going. Think about it. They cut Medicare to 3 million Americans to save what? 3-point-something billion? But they spent that in half a day over in Iran.
Right. Oh, for sure. I mean, the fiscal irresponsibility is huge.
If they turn around and spent that $1 trillion, and it would fund your entire healthcare system for every person in the United States for 2 to 3 years easily.
For sure. For sure. And 86 cents on the dollar is still coming from the federal government to pay for medical costs for American citizens. It's higher.
But I'm just saying.
Not great.
But what I'm trying to say to you is at the end of the day, you have to fix your economic budgets. You can't afford to spend what you're spending on your military anymore. So you have to come up with some other way. So either raise taxes or raise infrastructure, which will make you more money. You'll have to do something. She's right.
Yeah, that money needs to be more responsibly spent so that the American people can see a benefit from it, for sure.
Yeah. If you think about it, the American healthcare system is the most expensive in the Western world for people.
Yes.
In the United States. And no one asks the question why.
Well, I went to transfer my insurance, and it was really, really bad. So I had to go from one type of insurance to another type of insurance. And just for one transition, it was 2.5 to 3 times more expensive to change my insurance. So I had to do something wildly different than I thought I was going to have to do. Right. And it's because of all the inherent costs in healthcare in the United States. I feel it.
Yeah. Think about it. I'm on a certain type of medication once that I have to take every now and again. Well, it's basically for osteoporosis. Welcome to the curse of old age. So I'm going to say it. And I have to take it weekly. Now, it's manufactured in the United States. And when I was working, and before I got my medical card system sorted out, it was costing me roughly about 60 odd euros a month to pick it up. So I asked the chemist how much it would cost in the United States. Bear in mind, now it's manufactured in your country. Have a guess. It cost me 60 odd euros. How much do you think it costs in your country? Same medication.
So Ozempic, I know in France is about $90 per prescription. In the United States, that same prescription's about $1,200. So I would say that it's probably 20 times. So about $900 to $1,000.
$1,200.
$1,200. Okay. Well, right. And a lot of that has to do with the insurance companies in the United States have pharma, they have pharmacies, they manage medical institutions, and they manage the buildings. So that means that they're corporations that must adhere to stakeholders and shareholders and make them money. And then since they're in control of the whole thing and they can build a federal government for a huge portion of it, they just do that. So the shareholders for a lot of these insurance companies, and that's where it's coming from, is costing the American people an insane amount of money. But it doesn't cost them so much because they have prescription cards and things like that. But what will happen is on the back end, the federal government is paying into it, which means that the taxes must go up to pay for that. And the shareholders are forcing that issue.
Vicious cycle. Yeah, vicious cycle over there. It's so, like, when I see the likes of Trump and the rest of them going on about this bill and that bill, why not come up with your own health bill?
You could
come up with way they're so passionate about doing this and doing another ridiculous proposals, but why not do something to benefit the people in the United States, like healthcare? It's basic right for people.
All right, here we go.
And stuff going on, which is terrible for the people who are on the receiving end of it. And meanwhile, we're not fixing our tax system. We're not fixing our burgeoning budget deficit. And how do you think you're going to fix that? Probably reducing or reallocating some of your expenses, and you're going to be raising taxes. How else are you going to do it? And they're not entertaining that solution.
Right. The American government is a centralized entity. And just like the state of California and other states that have a tax, just an income tax, are killing everything with it, right?
Yeah.
And they're drunk on our money. They're just drunk on it. It's insane. It is insane. Just it seems like there's no regulatory power at the top end.
No, it's completely corrupted.
Right. And I was watching Josh Hawley, who's a senator, saying there is no reason for any member of Congress who sits on any committee to be individually investing in stocks, because you have, just because of your position, you have access to that insider information that will, Nancy Pelosi, make it so you can invest your money really, really good.
Do you know what? There was actually a proposal put on the floor by Bernie Sanders, by the way, saying that he was trying to get it through multiple times in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, he gets killed every time.
He gets killed every time. By the way, both sides of the aisle.
Oh, big time. Both sides.
I mean, this is one of the few things that both Democrats and Republicans will agree on, that law is never going to happen.
Oh, for sure.
It's because there's too many fingers in the pie. Everyone wants a piece.
Oh, yeah. But the problem is the American taxpayer is the one who gets jammed on that, right? So every representative in the House of Representatives represents approximately 890,000 people, not citizens, based on how census functions, right? So that means that those people are taking from that damn near 1 million people the opportunities when they invest like this, right? They're taking the ability for the market to function correctly because they have that insider information. It's just not a great thing. So,
no, it's not great. Think about it. There was a report came out there a couple of days ago. It was well reported and all over the place. Do you know this private betting you can do on world events?
Yes.
Quite popular over in the United States, yeah. There's one particular account that has made millions, by the way, betting on Trump's decisions of war or trade and so on.
Wonder why that is.
Completely insider knowledge, by the way.
Gotta be, yeah.
Yeah. Making millions. Now, there was going to be an investigation into it, but it got shut down.
What? No way.
Yeah, I know it's shocking. It was somebody's son-in-law, who married very close to power.
You are lucky I am already seated, because otherwise I'd have just fallen over. All right, let's get back to Sarah Paine.
Yeah.
These are people who are thinking about me and me getting reelected. They're not thinking about their children.
To create chaos.
Yeah. It's a country in precipitous national decline unless Americans rethink it. And the United States has had a number of crises in its history where what is best about us has pulled us together. Unclear, because nothing in this world is eternal. But the United States, when my childhood, I remember all of the Vietnam War vividly, and all of the race riots and I'm the age of Martin Luther King's children. I remember my mother was going off to civil rights demonstrations. I remember it, right? Did America fix what was wrong with America? Not everything, but it got better afterwards. But
yeah, enough people stood up and said, this is just absolute horseshit. We're not going to do it. And the government had to pay attention. They're like, okay.
But as she said, that generation who remembers that time in America is dying off, literally dying off.
Yes.
And what you're left with is people who don't learn the lessons of history too well.
Right. They didn't see World War II or their parents involved in all that and talking to them about that. And then what is appropriate moral and ethical action. The algorithms are splitting our brains, right? Yeah, we have to assume because we're forced to other people that they are wrong and there's no merit in their concept. And then the Dunning-Kruger effect, we take complexity out of it, pick one side, one or two, and then whoever picks the other side is wrong. And then whatever action is taken against them is appropriate because they're wrong. And not only that, they can't be right based on someone's conviction of a thing without appropriate evidentiary value or even looking into it. No critical thought at all. Not how do we parse this out? What is the best possible answer? Not the thing I think is right. Therefore, I'm going to shit all over the other person. That's not good. It's not good interaction at all.
And the funny thing is, she is right. When Americans work together, they are a fantastic nation of people.
Yes.
But at the moment, you're so polarized.
Yeah, we're so
entrenched on both sides of the aisle that you're very much in danger of ripping your own country to pieces, trying to save it.
Right. Well, I still think that a lot of it has to do with the algorithm. This two-party system where the other side is always wrong regardless. We can't see merit in other people's positions, and it makes it super, super difficult. Lay on top of that an operationally minded government, and you can have a huge issue.
And that's what you're having at the moment. Do you know why most countries moved away from a two-party system?
To avoid othering.
Because it doesn't work. They learned this during the time of the Roman Republic. Two parties don't work well because you were saying you utter the other side. That's the problem.
Well, the other perspectives can't come in, right? It's either this set of values versus that set of values, which is unclear, right? And you have to state claims to things that you don't necessarily believe as a group, right? And then you can't come to appropriate compromises because the other side will always be wrong, and you just can't, for in quotes, moral reasons, accept whatever it is they're saying.
So many times I've watched your politicians on different news agencies, and no matter what either side says, they'll just disagree with it. No matter how, by the way, Republicans come up with great ideas, Democrats come up with great ideas, but they get shouted down because they're Democrat or Republican.
Right.
And the sad thing is your whole country just seems to be at a
right. It's an affiliation problem. You are affiliated with the wrong group, therefore I cannot support you. Right.
And it seems to be more so now in the last 12 years than any other time in your history.
It's been a rough go. Has been a rough go.
It's been a rough go all because of one guy who's whipped you into such a frenzy that you can never look at a Democrat the same way again.
Be an issue. All right, here we go.
Isn't this the human condition? We have our ups and our downs. America's in a down right now.
This is so sad. What are you talking about?
It is, but I have great faith in your generation. If you think I like hitting the lecture circuit at my age, this is not my thing. I'm an introvert. I like reading books. I'm devoted to your generation. The rules-based order must survive.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do what she's doing, but feels compelled to do it because she thinks the system is just fun. And she's got to put her thing out there. Like she does it on a...
But she's right. The rule-based system has to survive.
It does. Well,
and at the moment, it's been flipped on its head. But for the most part, it will survive in some shape or form.
Right. She's doing on a way bigger scale than we're doing. We want to have a voice and say, hey, there are problems in the world. You guys need to look at this. That's why we're two seasoned voices in a very complex world. We're trying to parse it out like everybody else. What we have is some age and some experience and some observations, right? We don't have the specific acumen she has for the things she has, but we have a wide base of experiences and knowledge and experience in the world and seeing how things look. Someone who is half our age isn't going to have that. We want you out there to critically think about these processes and things. We don't really pick a side. We just say, hey, look, this looks busted. Let's talk about it, right? She's doing the same thing, but with a much more impressive TV than we do, you know?
I know the funny, because I've looked at comments before. As I've always said, do I agree with Trump on everything? No. I think we can all say that. There's a few policies I do like from Trump.
Oh, yeah,
but
for sure.
At the moment, he seems to have stumbled into a situation that I don't think he has the ability to fix.
Well, he's going to have to get somebody that can talk him through it, or get some smart heads out there to...
the sad thing is, he has surrounded himself by a bunch of sycophants and yes men. We've all seen it. We all know. All you need is 2 eyes in your head and an internet connection to realize the caliber of people he surrounded himself with. And she's right. If America keeps going on this course, it is going to be on a downward. It's going to go down.
Right.
In a very, very bad and ugly road.
Well, all I can hope is that America does the best they can and they just do better, right? I got to hope it, right? We're a pretty big force in the world, and we used to be the moral and ethical compass, and we can't even figure that out now, you know?
No.
That's a problem.
That's sad, actually. The guy you used to describe as the beacon of liberty at one stage was America. Even after World War II.
Oh, for sure.
As the beacon of liberty for the world, democracy, and everything that was good. But now, when you go, even when I see Americans coming to Europe, and I've seen the YouTube videos and the TikToks, and Americans are shocked by Europeans asking them questions. Like, I watched one American lady, she was up Northern Ireland.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And there was world news on the normal pub. World news is on, whatever else is on, football, whatever. So they were watching what's going on, and they turned around and asked her a straight question. Who did you vote for in the election? And of course, she put her back up and said, I don't have to tell you that. Well, they said that's an answer in itself. Surprise, surprise, she actually turned out to be MAGA in the end, but she was a Trump supporter in the end. But she was crying, saying, how dare they ask me who I voted for just because I'm American?
And it's a simple question. You can be like, nah, it's all good. No, like, I really don't want to disclose it.
As one more, I have to put a link to the video. This American guy turned around and he said, yes, you do have to answer that question. Because look at what America's done to the rest of the world.
Oh, the justification based on your vote, his actions, right?
Yes. You have to, you're going to be asked these questions more and more as you go abroad.
Well, it seems like in every election we have, it's a bad or worse. It's not good policies versus policies you don't agree with. It's like the ends are even different. And then the means to get to the ends, right?
If you look at the last 3 terms, or even the last 4 terms, and look at the caliber of presidents you have, do you honestly have to ask yourself, is this the best America could do?
Well, no, obviously it's not the best. But again, remember, it takes billions of dollars to get elected. We have a financial elite that get people into those spaces. The 1/10 of 1% that control the money functionally control PACs, and those PACs pay in, right? Since Citizens United, it has been bad, bad, bad.
If you think about even during the last, I can even go back to George Bush's time, back in the 2000s. But even if you look at all those presidents from, say, Bush onwards, or even from Clinton onwards, you're not exactly getting the best of the best.
No.
You don't have the like of, say, Kennedy or even Nixon for all his faults or so on.
Right.
You're not getting the best and the brightest. As you were saying, what you're getting is a bunch of yes men paid off by corporations.
Right. And again, I believe that Citizens United and super PACs have a lot to do with that.
No shadow of doubt, because No shadow of doubt. That's definitely a thing.
If you think I like hitting the lecture circuit at my age, this is not my thing. I'm an introvert. I like reading books. I'm devoted to your generation. The rules-based order must survive because the alternative is a 1984 dystopian universe. It's not. It is unnecessary, and I will quote a wonderful professor of mine who I had a bazillion years ago. He was Karl Deutsch. He was a Jewish refugee from Czechoslovakia. I don't know exactly what year he came, but basically he'd gotten a scholarship, I think, to go to Harvard as the Anschluss and all the rest of it happened. So he escapes. And he becomes part of the really great generation of American political scientists, many of them Jewish refugees who escaped Hitler's maw, and they're essential for founding the field afterwards. And one of the last times I ever saw him was after I graduated, and he was saying, you know, if the forces of evil, the forces of good are greater than the forces of evil in this world. So this is a Jewish refugee who knows fully about the cost of things. But if the forces of evil were greater than the forces of good, we wouldn't be here. But
That's a fact. That is a fact.
That is the fact. And that's what people should listen. There's no saying, I believe in the better angels of people's nature in a lot of ways myself. And I think for the most part, people try to do good in their own unique way with all the tools they have. But we have to start asking ourselves is what's happening in the world right now truly good? Or are we going down a very dark road that we do not know the end of yet? Even with all our history models or frameworks, this is a very unknown road in a lot of ways.
Right. Let's go.
Those calls, and we're in one. If you have time before you decamp back to Poland, go to the Museum of Fine Arts. I get it, it's not the Louvre, but it's a wonderful museum. And here you'll see the best of human beings. This beautiful artwork from across the globe. Human beings are wonderful. And, but we've got to bring out the best in each other.
Better angels.
And we got to put a lid on the people who are insisting on trying to bring out the worst and bring in the worst themselves. Back to Donald Trump. Look at all the pictures of him. He has the most angry face. You've seen it. And as you get old, your face hardens into who you are.
That's why I'm asking you about do you recognize him as a psychopath?
I'm not a psychiatrist.
I know that.
Well, yeah, it comes to mind. Tell me a psychopath has no empathy with anybody else? I have no idea. Apparently...
Immoral. With no empathy.
Yeah, he definitely has no empathy, and he definitely likes being mean, and he lies incessantly. He's abusive to women. I get all of that stuff. He also apparently has signs of dementia. I mean, I listen to his speeches. You've heard them. You can't follow it. Like, what's the trial? And then there's some question of whether he can read, of what the story is there. I mean, I that's probably not true, right? Or he doesn't like reading.
This feels kind of like bagging on him. This feels like we're piling on at this point, but yep.
Much. That's never been a question about any U.S. president. Ronald Reagan used to bring huge dossiers with him when he tried to go to bed. People would hand him large things, and he would be reading them late into the night. Yeah, all U.S. presidents prior to this one have taken the job really seriously. You may disagree with what they're up to. And they took, all of them, even Nixon, who was trying to subvert the system with Watergate. But his China policy was about winning the Cold War. That was about making things better for all of us. Winning the Cold War counts for the liberation of Poland.
So I think we're going to cut it there. But she's right. There are some aspects of what's going on right now which indicate things are not smooth. Right?
No, they're not smooth. As I said, I, for one, when Trump was elected, thought, okay, he's going to start making peace. We're going to settle into a different world order where things will start going back to the good old days when we could trade with each other, where there was peace in Ukraine and around the world. That's what he promised. And it's been the opposite ever since. And she's right. I know she kind of teabagged him a small bit there.
A lot. She piled on, son. She gave it to him. Woo!
But to be honest,
well, again, understand it's a perspective thing. It's a world perspective thing.
Can you disagree with one point she just made there about Trump? Is any part of that wrong, what she just said about him?
I don't.
In your own heart's part.
I don't know. I don't know if it's, again, like she said, I'm not a psychiatrist, but it looks like
she's right.
It looks like a breakdown. Right. It looks like there are problems.
Every single president that you've ever had, like them or hate them, have always taken that job seriously.
Right. Well, I think that's a mischaracterization. I think he takes the job seriously. I really do think he takes the job seriously.
Okay.
But again, it's perception. It's perception.
Yeah.
Right. If he's playing golf, maybe he's not doing. You see what I'm saying? Like I get the perception. You know.
And but the fact she also brought up a good point of him. He is constantly lying. How many times, even when we're researching videos,
where he says one thing and then somebody, we've seen that.
Yeah, he constantly lies. He's constantly just making up stuff. He just, to be honest, is he the best president the United States ever had? No.
Certainly not the worst, because he's not Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, if history is not going to remember him in a very fond way.
Well, he's got some time to fix himself, so hopefully he can pull out of it. He is the leader of the country, so I hope for the best. Right? You got to hope for the best.
Yeah. I hope he pulls his head over his ass a small bit and gets things fixed.
That would be the best. That would be a good deal. All right. For Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. We're the A&P Gents. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, help us beat the algorithm. We are out.